A truck driver can follow every law in the book and still lose his CDL for 120 days. Not for drunk driving, not for a cooked logbook, for decisions that are perfectly legal or so close to legal that no officer on the interstate would look at them twice. Buried in the federal rulebook is a quiet three-strike system, and a driver usually hears about it for the first time when strike two is already sitting on his record. Today, we're counting down 15 legal decisions that quietly end trucking careers. And number one is the most innocent-looking move on this entire list. But before the countdown, you need to understand the machine. Washington keeps a list of what it calls serious traffic violations, and most of them look like ordinary tickets. A few of them aren't tickets at all. 2 convictions from that list inside 3 years parks a driver for 60 days minimum. 3 parks him for 120. No pay, no miles, no exceptions. And every scale house and every courthouse in America reads from the same national record now. So here they are. From the ones that sneak up slowest to the one that ends careers before the driver even knows it started. Number 15. The 15 over habit. Every driver who ever ran produce out of California knows the arithmetic of a hot load. The appointment is fixed, the miles are not, and the difference comes off the speedometer. Running 15 miles an hour over the limit feels like an ordinary speeding ticket, the kind a four-wheeler pays and forgets by Friday. For a CDL holder, it lands on the federal serious violation list under the name excessive speeding, and the trooper writing it on the shoulder of Interstate 40 doesn't have to say a word about that. The fine might be $200. The entry on the record is the real price because it starts the 3-year clock. One is a warning shot. The second one inside 3 years parks the truck for 60 days, and a parked owner-operator still owes his truck payment, his insurance, and his plate money while the rig sits dead in the yard. Old hands used to say the bears only cost you money. Under the new arithmetic, the second bear costs you 2 months of your working life, and the violations only get easier to collect from here. Number 14. The lane change nobody signals. Watch any stretch of Interstate 81 through Virginia for 10 minutes and you'll see 100 lane changes that would never draw a second look. A trucker eases left around a slow dump truck, the signal blinks twice or maybe not at all, and life goes on. But improper or erratic lane change sits on the same federal list as excessive speeding, and unlike speeding, there's no radar gun involved. It's a judgment call, written in 30 seconds by whichever officer happens to be watching. Drivers have collected this one for drifting over a gore line at an exit ramp, for changing lanes inside an intersection, for a signal that came a half second after the wheel moved. In court, it sounds like nothing. On a CDL record, it counts exactly the same as blowing through a work zone at 80. The honest answer to what the driver did wrong is almost nothing. The legal answer is strike 1 and strike 2. And at least a lane change comes off the driver's own steering wheel. The next strike on the list gets spent for him by total strangers. Number 13. Riding the gap in rush hour. Following too closely is the violation that four-wheelers hand out to truckers like party favors. A car cuts into the space cushion ahead of a loaded rig on the Atlanta bypass. The gap collapses through no fault of the driver, and a motorcycle officer 2 lanes over sees a tractor trailer tailgating a sedan. The ticket says following too close. The federal table says serious traffic violation, same column as the other strikes. Veteran drivers spend their whole careers managing that cushion, giving up the space, watching it get stolen, giving it up again, and the law offers no credit for the 19 times the driver backed off. It only records the one moment the camera or the officer caught the gap closed. Safety instructors call the space cushion a driver's best friend. The disqualification table turned it into something strangers can spend for you. But at least these first 3 strikes involved a moving truck. The next one happens on a nightstand. Number 12. Leaving the CDL in the other wallet. This one stings because there's no bad driving in it at all. There was a time this couldn't have mattered much. Before 1986, a driver with a hot ticket in Ohio could carry a second license from Tennessee and a third from Georgia, and his sins never met each other. The Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Act ended all of that. One driver, one license, one record, which means the license itself became sacred, and forgetting it became a federal matter. So a driver swaps jackets at the motel in Amarillo, or leaves the wallet on the nightstand, and rolls out at 5 in the morning fully licensed, fully legal, fully qualified. Driving a commercial vehicle without the CDL in your possession is on the serious violation list. For a car driver, showing the license at the courthouse later usually makes a charge like that evaporate. A CDL holder can often do the same if he gets to the clerk in time, but if the conviction sticks, it counts as a strike, identical in weight to 15 over in a construction zone. A 40-year veteran with a spotless record can pick up a career-relevant conviction because of a nightstand. The old-timers who kept their chauffeur's license bolted in a metal sleeve on the dash understood something the rest of us forgot. Number 11. The weekend lead foot in the personal pickup. Plenty of drivers believe the CDL only watches them when they're in the big truck. It doesn't. The CDL is the only license a driver has, and it's on duty 7 days a week. Hammer the family pickup down a 2-lane on a Saturday and pick up a ticket bad enough to suspend your regular driving privilege, and the CDL goes down with it, because they are the same piece of plastic. And the major offenses follow a driver everywhere without exception. A DUI in the family sedan on a Sunday night, even with the truck parked 300 miles away, disqualifies a CDL for a full year, first offense. Courts have ended trucking careers over incidents involving lawnmowers and golf carts. In the outlaw era, what a man did on his own time was his own business. The federal rulebook ended that arrangement, and a lot of good drivers found out at the license bureau instead of in the courtroom. Number 10. Paying the ticket by mail. For 50 years, this was the responsible move. Take the ticket, sign the back, mail the check, keep rolling. No missed work, no courthouse, no lawyer. What a driver is actually doing when he mails that check is pleading guilty. And a guilty plea is a conviction. And a conviction is what feeds the 3 strikes machine. Nothing else matters to the database. Not the driver's spotless 20 years, not the trooper's mood, not whether the ticket was thin. The conviction posts to the record within weeks. The home state gets notified, and the 3-year clock either starts or, worse, keeps counting. Traffic attorneys who work the trucking corridors along Interstate 80 say the same thing over and over. The most expensive checks their clients ever wrote were the small ones, mailed from a truck stop, for tickets that could have been fought or reduced to something off the serious list. The law never made a driver fight a ticket. It just quietly made surrender the costliest legal option on the menu. But mailing the check is only the second worst way to handle a ticket. The courthouse offers a friendlier deal, and the friendlier deal is worse. Number 9. Taking the traffic school deal. This is the trap with the friendliest face. A driver gets a speeding ticket in his personal car, and the county offers the same deal it offers everyone. Take a defensive driving class, pay the court costs, and the ticket disappears. Completely legal, completely routine, and for a 4-wheeler it works exactly as advertised. But since the federal masking ban took effect, states are forbidden from hiding, deferring, or diverting any traffic conviction for a CDL holder in any vehicle, including the family car. The court clerk taking the payment may not know the man across the counter drives a truck for a living. The paperwork goes through. The driver believes the ticket vanished, and somewhere between the courthouse and the state licensing agency the conviction surfaces anyway, because the law says it must. Now the driver has a strike he thinks doesn't exist, which means he manages his record based on a score that's wrong. Ask around any driver's lounge and you'll find a man who learned his real strike count from a disqualification letter. Number 8. Keeping quiet about the out-of-state ticket. There's an old instinct in trucking that what happened in Wyoming stays in Wyoming. The rulebook disagrees. A CDL driver has 30 days from any traffic conviction, any state, any vehicle except a parking ticket, to notify his employer in writing. Miss the window and staying quiet becomes its own federal violation, stacked on top of whatever the ticket was. And the silence rarely holds anyway, because carriers pull annual motor vehicle records and the conviction is sitting right there with a date on it. Now the driver has 2 problems instead of 1, and safety managers fire men for the hiding faster than they ever fire them for the speeding. The old CB code said you protected your own business. The modern rule turned an honest man's silence into a violation with his signature missing from it. Number 7. The phone call that isn't hands-free. Every state lets a trucker talk on the phone. What the federal rule forbids is holding it, and the line between those 2 things is thinner than most drivers realize. The standard is 1 touch. Reach over, press 1 button, talk through the speaker or the headset, and you're legal. Pick the phone up off the passenger seat to dial, hold it to your ear for even a moment at a red light in Nashville, and that's a handheld violation carrying a fine of up to $2,750, with the carrier exposed for up to $11,000. And it sits on the serious violation list, which means it's a strike. 2 handheld convictions inside 3 years parks a driver 60 days. 3 parks him 120. The CB radio, the instrument that built trucking culture, remains perfectly legal to hold, key up, and talk on all day long. The government banned the boots and the linear amplifiers decades ago, but the old radio outlived the smartphone in the eyes of the law, and somewhere an old-timer is laughing about that. If these are the kinds of stories you drove through firsthand, hit subscribe, because we cover the real history and the real rules of American trucking every week. Number 6. Rolling the railroad crossing. Here is the only violation in the entire rulebook that spells out 120 days by name. Every commercial driver is required to slow down at a highway rail crossing, check that the tracks are clear, and never start across without room to clear the far side. Certain loads, the placarded tankers and the buses, have to stop completely. On a gravel county road outside Wichita, with wide open sight lines and no train within 20 miles, slowing to a crawl for empty steel rails feels like ceremony, so drivers roll them, the way they've rolled them since the 50s. The first conviction parks a CDL for no less than 60 days. The second inside 3 years parks it for 120, and the third within those years takes it for a full year. No fatality required, no near miss, no train in sight. Just a camera at the crossing or a patrol car in the tree line, and a habit as old as trucking itself becomes a third of a year without a paycheck. Number 5. 1 beer with supper, and this is where the penalties stop being measured in days. In every state in the Union, a man can drink a beer with his chicken fried steak and legally drive his car home. The limit for four-wheelers is .08. For a commercial driver behind the wheel of a rig, the limit is .04, half of that, and the enforcement doesn't even wait for the number. Any detectable amount of alcohol, any at all, puts a driver out of service for 24 hours on the spot. Blow .04 or better, and it's treated like a full DUI under the federal table, which means a 1-year disqualification for the first offense. 1 year, for a blood alcohol level that wouldn't raise an eyebrow at a checkpoint in a Buick. The truck stop lounges of the 70s had beer coolers humming right next to the shower list, and nobody thought a thing of it. That world is gone. Today, the single most expensive beer in America is the legal one a trucker drinks a few hours before his clock starts. And at least the beer was a choice a man made with his eyes open. The next 2 career enders come off a pharmacy shelf and a fuel desk. Number 4. The prescription in the glove box. A driver's own doctor writes him a legal prescription. Maybe a painkiller after shoulder surgery. Maybe medication he's taken for years. He fills it at the pharmacy like a law-abiding citizen and goes back to work. Then a random DOT drug test comes back positive and the system doesn't simply take his word for it. A medical review officer calls the number on file to hear the explanation and verify the prescription. Miss that phone call because you're rolling through a dead zone in Montana, or fail to produce the documentation in time, and a legally prescribed medicine gets reported as a positive test. That posting goes into the Federal Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. The driver is pulled from the wheel immediately, and every carrier in the country can see the flag before they see his 40 years of safe miles. The pill bottle was legal. The paperwork around it is what carries the career. And the old hands who kept every receipt in a cigar box under the bunk had the right idea all along. Number 3. The CBD gummies at the fuel desk. Walk into any major truck stop today and there's a rack of CBD products sitting between the energy shots and the sunflower seeds, sold legally under the 2018 Farm Bill. Drivers buy them for sore backs and long nights, the same reasons they used to buy liniment. The trouble is that the CBD market is barely regulated. The THC content on the label is frequently wrong, and independent testing has found products with several times the legal trace amount inside. Enough of that builds up in a driver's system to fail a DOT urine test, and the Department of Transportation has stated flatly that CBD use is not an accepted excuse for a positive marijuana result. A failed test means removal from driving, a clearinghouse record, and a return-to-duty process with a substance abuse professional that routinely takes months and sometimes years. A perfectly legal purchase made 20 feet from the fuel island has ended more modern careers than half the outlawed tricks we've ever covered on this channel. The receipt says wellness product. The clearinghouse says failed test. And only one of those two documents follows the driver forever. Everything so far has been paper and chemistry. Number 2 happens in broad daylight, with an inspector standing right there watching. Number 2. Moving the truck after the sticker goes on. Picture the scene at a scale house on Interstate 70. An inspector finds a break out of adjustment, slaps an out-of-service order on the rig, and walks off to the next truck. The driver is now parked on a crowded inspection pad. The repair shop is a half-mile up the road, and moving the truck that half-mile under its own power seems like the reasonable, adult, practically legal thing to do. It is one of the most severely punished decisions in all of trucking. Violating an out-of-service order disqualifies a driver for no less than 180 days on the first offense, with fines that run into the thousands, and a second offense stretches into multiple years. That's longer than the penalty for a stack of speeding convictions handed out for driving a few hundred yards at 10 miles an hour. The rule sees no difference between limping to the shop and hauling freight across 3 states. The moment that sticker goes on the door, the truck might as well be welded to the pavement. And that brings us to number 1, the most legal decision on this entire list, because it isn't an action at all. Ignoring the faraway ticket. A driver picks up a citation in some state he swears he'll never run again. Maybe a lane violation in Connecticut, maybe a limit he never saw change outside a small town in Georgia. Fighting it means a 1,000-mile deadhead to a courthouse. So he does the one thing that feels free: nothing. But nearly every state belongs to compacts that share exactly this information. And when the court date passes, the faraway state reports the failure to appear, and the driver's home state quietly suspends his license until the matter is resolved. The notice goes to an address he left 3 weeks ago. So he keeps driving, completely unaware, and the moment a scale master runs his license, he's no longer a man with an old ticket. He's driving a commercial vehicle while suspended, which sits among the major offenses, and the disqualification for that starts at a full year. One ignored piece of paper, worth maybe $150, snowballs into a suspended license, a roadside arrest, and a year without a CDL. The outlaws of the 70s at least knew when they were running from something. This driver never even knew he was being chased. Look at that list as a whole, and the pattern is hard to miss. Not one of those 15 drivers set out to break the law. They mailed checks like responsible men, took the classes the court offered, drank a legal beer, filled a legal prescription, bought a legal product off a legal shelf. The old outlaw era we covered before, the comic books and the midnight heavy runs, ended because the government could finally see everything. This era is stranger. The system doesn't just see everything anymore. It remembers everything, connects everything, and counts everything, from a lane change in Virginia to a gummy bought in Arizona, on one permanent record with a 3-strike counter ticking underneath it. The men who drove the golden age worked with more freedom and more risk. Today's driver hauls the same freight through a minefield where half the mines are painted to look like open road. If you drove for a living, tell us in the comments which one of these caught you or somebody you ran with, because every driver we talk to has at least one story. And hit subscribe, because next time we're breaking down what a trucker's paycheck actually bought in 1975 compared to what it buys today. And the answer made even the old hands sit back in their chairs. Keep the shiny side up.